Hello everyone, in this lecture we are going to explore one of the most widely used design pattern in Selenium automation, the page object model. It is also called as POM. So why do we need page object model? Let's start with a problem. Imagine you have 100 test cases in your test suite and every single test requires login before it can proceed. Now, if you are copy pasting the same locators and code to enter the username and password in all 100 tests, what happens when something changes? Let's say the HTML ID of the username field changes from username to username 1. Now, your entire test suite will break and you will be forced to go and fix 100 separate places. So, that's a maintenance nightmare. So, how do we solve this? By centralizing the locators and actions in one place, and that's exactly where the page object model comes in. So, what is page object model? I have given a detailed explanation here, you can read it. The page object model is a design pattern that encourages us to create separate Python classes for each web page in our application, store all locators and actions for that page inside the class, keep our test scripts clean by only calling methods from these classes. So, instead of copying locators everywhere, our tests simply reuse methods from the page classes. This makes our framework cleaner, reusable and easier to maintain. So, how we can structure the page objects? So, for each screen or page in our application, we can create one Python class. So, let us say in our application there are 4 pages. Let us say login page is there, products page is there, checkout page is there, confirmation page is there, right. Then we can create 4 separate classes. For login page we can create login page class, for products page we can create products page class, similarly for checkout page class, and for confirmation page class. So, each class will contain the locators relevant to that page and also the actions or methods whatever will perform on that page. So, if we want to click a button on the product page, we can just call a method from the product page class. I will explain all these things with code and examples. So, just wait for 2 minutes. I am just explaining you the concept, then we will go to the code. So, let us start implementing the page object model by creating the login page class. Okay. So, first we will begin by organizing our code structure. Okay. So, inside our framework, let me create a new directory. So, new directory, we will name it as page underscore objects. Okay. And inside that, let me create a new Python file. So, new Python file. Okay. I will name it as login underscore page. Okay. Fine. So, this will hold the class for interacting with the login screen. So, let me create a class login page. So, I will just write class then login page. Okay. Here we will write all this stuff. So, first let me start with a constructor. Okay. So, how we will write a constructor? Def underscore init, right. So, every class has a constructor and that constructor we need to define like this. So, init is a keyword we will use for a constructor method and self is an object. So, it is a class instance. So, that will be assigned by default for every class method as well as a constructor. So, this self is a first argument or we can call it as a parameter for all the class methods. Now, inside this constructor we will define our locators. Okay. So, here we will not only just define the locators, but also we will have the actions. So, what is the action we are performing here, right? So, let us go to our browser and see. So, this is the page we are trying to automate, right? So, this is the login page. Here we have the username, password and then we can click on this login, right? Then it will go to the next page. So, here what is the action? So, here the action is login. Okay. So, let us go to our code and here what we will do, as our action is login here. So, let me create a login method. So, def login. Okay. Then let me copy the code from this test underscore source.py file, right. So here we have just written like this, right. So let me just copy. So basically what we are doing here, we are identifying this username field and then we are sending this username and then password and then we are clicking here, right. So I am just copying this code and let me put it here. Okay. So here we see lot of errors, right. So we need to fix it. So first of all, instead of hard coding these locators here in this place, we can declare these locators in the constructor and from the constructor we can call here, right. So we will use tuple concept here. We know this normal bracket is a tuple. So basically here it is inside a tuple. So consider this by.id and then this username tuple which has two arguments, by.id and then username. So let me cut this whole tuple and place it here. Okay. So we have by.id and username as two arguments inside our tuple. So let me assign a variable which I can say, let us say username equal to then this tuple, and this is our locator for our username. Okay. So here we see an error. So let just import it. Okay. Fine. Now let us use this username here, but still we see some error here, right. So if we will hover over here, so what we see, create parameter username, but we have already created a parameter as username. Then why it is asking again? Because the variable whatever we have created in this constructor, the life is inside this constructor only. It is not a global variable. So this variable is declared inside this constructor. So the scope lies inside this, and when we come out of this constructor, the scope dies. So nobody knows this username outside this constructor. That is why we are seeing this error here. So how to fix it? So we need to use self keyword concept. So you know self is an instance of a class variable. That means self have access to the entire class. It can travel anywhere in the class. So what we can do is we will attach this variable to self. So we will write self dot username. Okay. So here also we will do the same thing, self dot username. So this error is gone, but now we see one more error here in driver, right. So what is this driver? As of now this driver doesn't have any life. Okay. So where is this driver life defined? This driver life is actually defined in our test, this test underscore source.py file. So technically whoever are calling this page objects, this driver has to be sent to this page object files from our test, because test will instantiate the driver. So we will instantiate the driver in our test and this driver should be sent to our page object files. So how we will send it? So what we will do, we will go to our login page and here we will do self comma driver. So we will add this driver as an argument to the constructor. So that means whoever calling this login page class, they are forced to call with a driver. Without driver parameter, nobody can call this login page class. So let me call this login method from our test underscore source.py file. So for that what we will do, let me copy this class name. So what we will do here, we will say login page equal to login page and then we will pass driver here, then we will say login page dot login. Okay, we need to do import here. Okay, fine. So we are sending driver from our test, and now driver is available in this part because we are sending it from our test, but from here to here how it will go? Again we need to use self concept. We will assign this driver parameter to self dot driver. So what we will do here, self dot driver equal to driver. Okay, and then we will replace this driver with self dot driver, self dot driver, self dot driver. Okay. So this driver is being activated from our test by sending as an argument. So now we need to do one more thing. We are using this self dot username, but this doesn't work directly. So what exactly this find element needs? This find element needs two arguments. One is this by.id and then second one is this username. Okay. If you will see this, right, this is a tuple, but this find element expects arguments. So, how to fix it? So, if we will put a star here, so the problem is solved. This tuple breaks down and it splits into two parameters. That is what we need. We need two parameters, one is ID and then other one is username. So, the moment we put a star to the tuple, what happens is this tuple splits into two arguments, whatever we have given here, okay, by.id and username. So, it will work fine. Okay. So, let us do the same thing for this password and login button also. So, let me just copy this, and here what we can say, self dot password equal to this, and then self dot login button is equal to this, okay, and instead of this we will say star self dot password, and instead of this we will say star self dot login button. Okay. So, this should work fine now. Let us execute and see if our tests are getting executed properly. So, let us go to our test. So, here we will comment out this, because previously we are directly using all these locators and we are sending all this username password from our test itself. Now, we do not want to send it from our test. We have written a separate login page, and here we have all the locators written here, and then we have this login method written here. So, we are calling this login method from here, and then we are trying to see if our test is getting executed fine. Okay. So, how we will run our test? We will write PyTest, then test underscore source.py minus v. I am not giving any browser here, because by default it will take the Chrome browser. Okay. So, let us enter. So, you can see Chrome browser is open, and then it is entering the username and password, and it is getting executed fine. So, we can see the test got executed, one passed. So, what is the advantage when we are writing all these locators here? So, if tomorrow there is any change in these locators and we need to update these locators, then we can come here and update here only in one place, then all tests will work fine. So, in summary, the page object model gives a clean way to separate test logic from UI logic. It centralizes your locators, so updates are made in one place. It makes our test more maintainable, reusable and readable. So, in this lecture, we created a login page class and added locators and action methods in it, and then use that action method in a test case. So, in the next lecture, we will continue building page classes for other pages like the product and checkout pages, and we will see how POM fits into the full automation framework. So, that is all for this lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.